Hello, my name is Joshua Williams. I'm from Midwestern State University. I will be working with Jonathan Tyner and Alexander Kuna on security vulnerabilities and the rise of ransomware.
Hello, my name is Alexander Cunha. I am part of Group 1 for the REU 2021 here at UT Dallas.
My name is Jonathan Tyler, and I am from the University of Arkansas.
What is ransomware? Ransomware is a category of malware that is designed to deny access to a user's data or files. This is usually done by disabling the device's screen and input devices, or encrypting the data, making the files unreadable without a key to reverse the effect. These approaches lead to a ransom that is displayed on the device's screen to inform the victim of the situation. The screen shows payment methods or contact information to pay the ransom. Next, we'll be discussing the types of ransomware. Ransomware is categorized into two types: locker ransomware and crypto ransomware. The locker variant is designed to remove input from a device and lock the screen with an unremovable message. This is done by overriding or disabling the input device inputs, accessories such as a mouse, keyboard, or anything that you can really use to use a device like a computer or a phone. On the top right, as you can see, is an example of the locker variant ransomware screen. These types tend to spoof government agencies as to scare the victim into paying the ransom. The second type of ransomware is the crypto variant. This type of ransomware is designed to encrypt personal or important files on the affected device, using public or custom encryption algorithms to make files such as PDF, doc, text, or any Office file unreadable by the computer or the user. On the top left, you can see an example of the crypto ransomware ransom screen, and showing the victim that their files have been locked, forcing to either lose their files or to pay the ransomware showed on the ransom screen. However, over the recent years, these categories have become somewhat irrelevant, as modern ransomware is a hybrid between the two versions, being able to lock the device while the malware is encrypting the files on the machine. Next slide will show how the ransomware works. Ransomware functions on the following process. It first enters the network through a malicious means, by spam email or a malicious website that downloads the virus onto your device. Once in the device, it will stealthily assign administrative privileges to itself and begin device takeover. From there, it will assign ownership of drives, partitions, and all files to itself so that the user cannot delete or stop the virus in progress. Afterward, it will delete local or connected backup shadow images or system images on the device or network. This is done to stop the user from wiping the drive and restore the files to the device, which would make the ransom mute. Once these preliminary steps are done, the virus makes itself known by disabling the user input and begins to disable access to the user's data. This process depends on the parent variant used, but it is usually done by file encryption or device lockout, as mentioned in the previous slides. Once denial of service is complete, a message is shown on the device screen displaying the ransom note and payment info. This is done for the victim to pay the attackers and successfully complete the role of the virus. On the next slide, you can show a graphical representation of the previous slides of how it works. This shows you just the general know-how, and on the right shows you the results of a crypto variant of the ransomware. As you can see, the viruses or the files that can be assumed to be music files have been now turned into random lettered files that have no meaning, as it shows these files that have become unreadable and pretty much useless. On the next slide shows the evolution of the ransomware screens. On the right, you can show the first ransomware screen of the AIDS and PC Cyborg ransomware. This screen shows just a basic text document on the screen that you can't get rid of, showing that your device has been locked and you pretty much have to pay to get your device access back. And then on the left is the WannaCry ransom screen, which is a 2017 variant, which shows an improvements into quality and production value, as it shows a timer showing how long you have it until your files are deleted or the ransom is doubled, showing information of what is happening on your device, links to the contact information and payment methods to the attackers, and a simple description screen button to decrypt your device once you have paid the ransom. Next, we'll be going over the history of ransomware. First, begin with in 1989, the first reported ransomware of AIDS or PC Cyborg. It goes by two names. Variant of the ransomware is reported. The start of ransomware starts in 1989 from AIDS researcher known as Joseph Pop. This early virus created by him was able to lock the screen of an infected computer after 90 boots. The screen will show a message informing the victim that they've been unable to use the device until they call a support number and pay 189 USD to remove the virus from the machine. The malware was spread using floppy disks during an AIDS conference. Next, we'll be showing the evolution and the first reported instance of the modern ransomware. This form of virus would evolve and become more advanced. In the early 2000s, the first variants of modern ransomware would be created, such as the Trojan.gp coder. This was the first crypto ransomware to be reported. This variant used a rudimentary encryption algorithm that was easily breakable. It was spread by spam email attachments that the victims downloaded unknowingly, or was given through like USBs or other ways of usual virus transmission. Next is the early 2010s, which is the rise where ransomware is starting to become noticed. 2013 shows signs of the crypto locker appearing in America, which was able to infect several major companies such as UPS or FedEx. While the locker variants started to use the scareware tactics, and the pain for the ransom easily solved like once again, but they were able to affect a large amount of devices throughout the country. As these variants were starting to use the payment through Bitcoin, which makes it harder to track these attackers, and is estimated that over 250,000 devices were infected by this variant. In recent years, these attacks have been known to be spreading across the world, hitting several nations, such as the 2017 attack of WannaCry that hit several nations. This type of ransomware spread by spam email or a Microsoft exploit that was able to spread itself throughout a network. This ransomware was able to spread stuff through major American corporations and government organizations around the world. It was suspected that it spread through spam email at first, but then was able to go through entire network using the Windows exploits, causing a full network lockout. The next slide shows the graphical WannaCry map infection. In the US, affected in the major companies such as FedEx or UPS once more. In the UK, 61 National Health Services buildings were affected, causing major issues for critical cases over there. In Spain, telecom and gas companies were hit, causing stops in gas productions and other major infrastructure. In France, factories were stopped production as most of their systems were locked. And in Russia, over 1,000 Interior Ministry computers were infected, causing major issues. And it is said that over 230,000 devices were affected because of this.
So these four attacks are the most famous, or what we deemed to be the most famous ransomware attacks in history. Two of them we already gone over. It starts with the 1989 AIDS incident. Then we're going to go to the 2017 WannaCry incident. After that, the REU incident in 2019. And then lastly, we'll be doing the Colonial Pipeline attack in 2020. So as we already went over, the 1989 AIDS incident was the first known ransomware attack, which is why we listed it as one of the most famous ransomware attacks. It was by Joseph Pop, an AIDS researcher, and what he did was distribute 20,000 floppy disks to other AIDS researchers in different countries. And after these disks were inserted and the computer was powered on 90 times, it would activate a malware message demanding a payment of $189 and another $378 for software lease. And This was the first known or first recorded incident of a ransomware attack, and which is why we listed it as one of the most famous. So after that, we're going on to the 2017 WannaCry attack. The reason why we listed this as one of the most famous is because of the amount of money and the amount of destruction it did worldwide. It estimated that $4 billion were lost due to this ransomware. More than 200,000 people and companies were affected, big ones such as FedEx and Nissan. What this did was spread through spam email, and the WannaCry took advantage of any unprotected networks, and it really also took advantage of the vulnerability of Microsoft Windows software. So now I'm going to be going over the 2019 to 2020 REU attack. This was also similar to the WannaCry attack. It spread through malicious emails that contained dangerous links and attachments. This was also one of the most expensive ransomwares in history. A single ransom amount could exceed up to $300,000 from this ransomware. It also cost over $60 million in damages worldwide. Now I'm going to be going over the 2021 Colonial Pipeline attack, which is actually the reason why we decided to do this project, because it was the most recent ransomware and it was in the news and it affected our everyday lives. So this attack was by a Russian group known as DarkSide. They were responsible for 45% of petroleum and diesel transports in the eastern part of the U.S. to be shut down after a single cyber attack on May 7th, 2021. The effects of this attack were that it raised fuel prices throughout the nation, and the attack lasted for only a few days, but the impact of the attack lasted for weeks. And the way this attack was spread was due to stealing a single password of a company. So why is preventing ransomware important? So as seen by the examples I just discussed, companies can be quite vulnerable to ransomware attacks. These attacks can cost millions and even billions of dollars if the ransoms are paid, along with the files that were encrypted could never be recovered. So like the Colonial Pipeline incident, these attacks can often cripple critical infrastructure such as the United States or other countries with critical infrastructure, which can also cause major shortages in countries or leave nations vulnerable to attacks or threats. Current ransomware guidelines lack real prevention and restoration methods, meaning that it's hard to restore what the company had or corporation had prior to the ransomware attack, which is what we'll be focusing on with our solution. So here are just a couple of solutions or a couple of statistics of ransomware that we listed through Forbes. So it was estimated that $17 billion was lost to ransomware in the year 2020. It's also estimated that every 11 seconds a new ransomware attack occurs, and it's estimated that 58% of victims are going to cave in and pay the ransom that they are attacked by in the year 2021. And that statistic is based off previous trends of years, that the number of victims that pay the ransom just keeps going up annually. So in the year 2021, it is estimated that $20 billion will be lost due to ransomware, which that number in itself just shows how prominent of a problem it is today. And obviously this money could be used in a lot of different areas other than paying it to malicious intent.
Next is our research. We choose crypto ransomware as it tries to infect one computer by hiding itself as a different file. Once infected, it will spread to all the other systems on the server. These are quite difficult to crack and obtain the keys when most of them are new and always changing. And they are always trying to spread their malware through spam emails, affected PDFs, or other storage devices that are already affected. They are also quite difficult to track as they mask their key servers as ransomware to be paid in Bitcoin and can be sent through random network domains.
So these next couple slides are just going to be our reasoning for adding certain methods into our solution. So starting off, we have two sources that I will be going over. So new standards for ransomware protected servers are being evaluated on a daily basis. So we decided to search for what are the most common / effective approaches against ransomware, and highlighted I have the importance of data integrity and a backup recovery point is what we found. And the source from that, it can be seen from the bottom. So the next slide, I'm going to be talking about some other effective approaches against ransomware. So for the server design and architecture, what was the most common and effective uses were a 2-server design and an isolated secret server from the normal server. And then a network connected server would also be an effective design against ransomware. So now I'm going to be discussing the examples of papers methods that were used in papers. But first, before I do that, I'm going to be discussing the difference between a snapshot and a backup, so that when that's referenced in the upcoming slides, there won't be any confusion. So both are methods of saving files to a sort, and I just sorted out the differences with this table. So a backup could be stored in another location, same server, or even the same drive, whereas a snapshot, it has to be stored in the same location as original data. A snapshot is more of a picture of the server or file drive at that time, whereas a backup is more of a accumulation of files over time. So to put it simply, a snapshot would be a picture of all the files contained in a drive at a time, whereas backup would be a single file being added individually to a server. So here's some things that I point out through the table. A backup is more of a long-term solution, whereas a snapshot is more of a short-term solution. Snapshot is faster than a backup. A backup can be used on a file system, whereas a snapshot can be used on files, software, and settings. It could take a snapshot of software, it could take a snapshot of settings, all that. So a snapshot, yes, like I said, it takes a short time to copy data, and a backup takes a long time to copy data. Next slide. So here are the examples that we took from papers. Here I have in green the positives that I found in these papers of methods that we decided to use in our own solution, and also the negatives of reasons why we didn't use some of the things mentioned in the paper. So here is the continuous data protection method. So what this encapsulates is, as changes occur, the system keeps track of them with a limited rollback period. We decided to use a portion of this method in our solution because it is fast and is a more comprehensive form of replication, but also storage becomes an issue due to the amount of details saved, and encrypted and deleted files on the source remain the same on the target location. So it takes more of a snapshot instead of a backup, but the part that we decided to implement in our solution was the fact that the system keeps track of individual files as changes occur. So it will keep track of files, and if there's a change in the type of file, it will raise concern in the system. Whereas if files all are the same, it will be able to pass it through the server. That way, if any malicious files with weird types come through, then the system will recognize that and flag it. So the next example that we found that we used some of the methods for was remote data replication. And what this encapsulates is it replicates data at a specific point in time, and it's often referred to as a snapshot. So similar to the first one I just discussed, it creates a copy of the most recent data in a dispersed location in the event of a disaster for quick recovery. The positive of this is that it's fast and it's also used for business and continuity. And the negative is that it's not considered a backup, similar to the previous one. And encrypted and deleted files on the source remain the same on the target location. So the method that we took from this example that we decided to use in our solution is the fact that it takes the data and puts it in a dispersed location, which is what we deemed as the secret server. So on to the next example. from the papers mentioned is the CDL safe example. And what this example is a system designed to not detect ransomware, but to reduce ransomware damage. It copies old files to a new target location, which is remote cloud storage using backup. And when it detects a new file with little similarities, it flags that file. So this is the example that we took the most inspiration from, I guess you could say. So the positives of this example is that it's lightweight, it's efficient against storage, and only authenticated users can restore files. So some of the methods that we took away from this one was that it copies old files to a new target location. The fact that it used a cloud storage backup system, so storage doesn't become an issue. Um, Another reason why we decided to use the methods from this is because it was lightweight, efficient against storage, and lastly, only authenticated users can restore the files. And the way we did this was through a challenge response method, which would really just be typing in a designated password, or if a company felt that wasn't sufficient, they could do a different way of authenticating users to restore files.
We decided the best course of action to prevent major impacts of ransomware is a secure file backup server. How it works is it restores the system back to before a ransomware attack occurred. There are a few requirements though. First, it needs to be a unidirectional network to already have data going one way. Next, authorized files of rights to update all types of data in the server. Lastly, the server needs to be isolated from all attacks.
So here's many of the more explained ways of each thing, which is like the one-way data thing. It talked about it needs to limit malware spread so it doesn't actually get into the server. And we need authorized, so like it limits more of the malware trying to delete and affect all the data that's in that server to make sure it's protected. And of course the isolated part, because it can be affected fairly easily, and it needs all these things to check to make sure it does not get affected by getting scanned and all that.
And then also here you can see that
The
Dropbox or Google Drive as one of the safe methods that would be the backup cloud server.
So here's a diagram for how we propose this. You can see all.
Okay, and now we're going to go on to the conclusion and then further work that will be needed to make our solution work.
So we have all this cone, which tells you all what we need. We need like more awareness because there were quite a lack of prevention methods. Why the threat of ransomware keeps on growing and growing. Then we need to discover the focus and detection methods. And then we need to evaluate the best ways of actually stopping these ransomwares. And intent is what we want to do to stop it. So then we design it and we research more into making this like stuff like the backup system better and stronger and more safe.